film opens with a shot of a floating city dumping debris down into a massive junkyard. We see a man, Dr. Ito, scavenging around for useful parts. He comes across the remains of a cyborg woman. Upon scanning her, he realizes that she's somehow still alive. He takes her in, and with the help of his assistant, gives her a new body. She wakens the next morning with no memory of anything. She heads downstairs and sees Dr. Ito giving a free repair. What a nice guy. She then eats with Dr. Ito and his assistant. Though, she doesn't even know what an orange is or how to eat it. The pair go out into the city for a little sightseeing. Alita makes note of the marvelous floating city, Zalem, and also takes intrigue in the broadcast of a game, known as Motorball. Dr. Ito warns her not to waste time on such things. They grab a bite to eat, but Dr. Ito runs off for a moment. A small dog catches Alita's attention, and she pets it. A small breeze blows a bounty her way. Apparently, there's a cyborg murderer on the loose, who's already killed several women. Suddenly, a giant weaponized robot appears and warns her to move. She instinctively assumes a battle stance and is nearly trampled, but is saved by a young man named Hugo. Though, the dog is still in peril. Alita uses her ninja skills to retrieve it safely. They talk a little bit, and Alita shares that Dr. Ito found her in the junkyard and created her new body. Dr. Ito returns, and the pair head off, but Alita can hardly keep her eyes off of Hugo. We cut to a scene of a murder taking place at night. Alita is awakened the next morning by Dr. Ito arriving. He has a suspicious wound on his arm. Later, she helps with the repair while eyeing his injury. Dr. Ito brings up the subject of the murderer and warns her not to go out at night. Alita promises, though rather unconvincingly. Alita heads out and runs into a strange woman with a mark on her forehead. She asks to see Alita's arm and holds it without saying anything. A bewildered Alita walks off as Dr. Ito watches from above. Dr. Ito and the woman, named Shirin, talk. Turns out, she's his estranged wife. She questions why this new girl, Alita, is running around in their deceased daughter's body. She later asks him to join forces with her once more, since she could use his skills. Dr. Ito declines. He doesn't want to create more monsters for Motorball. Shirin mentions that her employer, Vector, promises to send her back to Zalem if she cooperates. Dr. Ito sincerely doubts that. She heads back in her car, where Vector awaits. Meanwhile, Alita runs into Hugo, who's playing a small-scale version of Motorball with some neighborhood kids. She joins the game and has a rough start, but quickly gets the hang of things. Alita and Hugo later head off to a nice spot where they can see Zalem. Hugo explains to her that she must be from Zalem since she was found in the junkyard. Though, she still can't remember anything. He shares with her his dream to go there one day, and that he has the connections and tenacity to accomplish it. At night, Alita lays in bed until she spots Dr. Ito heading out unannounced into the night. She follows him and discovers that he's chasing after a woman. He takes out a giant hammer-like weapon and prepares to strike before Alita stops him. However, she's got the wrong idea. The woman has disappeared, and Dr. Ito explains that this is a trap. Suddenly, two terrifying-looking cyborgs appear and refer to him as a hunter-warrior, which is basically a bounty hunter. He tussles with one of them, but is ultimately in over his head. As he prepares to meet his demise, Alita runs up and dropkicks one of them before beating his face in. Brutal. Next up is this chick. She doesn't look so bad. Okay, never mind. Her blades prove to be quite the obstacle for Alita, but she eventually overcomes the threat and flying sidekicks her in the face. Now, for the final boss, Grishka. He's an absolute unit, but Alita's agility is far superior. In the middle of delivering a powerful blow, Alita has flashbacks of a battle on the moon. Seems she's a warrior of some kind. Back in the moment, she completes her strike, kicking Grishka's arm off. He retreats underground and warns her that he'll be back. Dr. Ito claims the bounties on the criminals, then the pair heads back home for repairs. They talk about Alita's body. He explains that he made it for his late daughter, who's also named Alita. She was murdered by one of his patients, who was looking for drugs. He then shares with her that Alita's heart is in fact an antimatter microreactor, strong enough to power the entirety of Iron City. This technology is 300 years old, from before the war. Vector and Shirin are seen talking about business before he walks off. Shirin hears something by the window before an injured Grishka bursts through. He shares that he was defeated by Dr. Ito's little cyber girl. During repairs, Grishka's eyes turn blue and he begins to speak, being operated by someone else. Vector recognizes the man as Nova, his boss. He shares with him what happened to Grishka and agrees to retrieve the girl. We later see Dr. Ito and Alita looking over the bounty registry. Strangely, there is no mark out for Grishka. They conclude that someone with power must be helping him. Alita wants to become a hunter to stop him, but Dr. Ito argues against it. She storms off and later goes to a motorball match with Hugo. He takes her backstage to see the competitors. Hugo knows all the crew members. Alita spots Chirin with Vector, and they both eye her up before discussing some plans. They notice that one of the competitors has a very overpowered hacksaw weapon. Yeah, that one. It's messing up the odds. Chirin suggests that they make use of it for their little project. Hugo runs up to Alita and tells her that something came up. He needs to head out with Tanji and his other friends. Though, he makes it up to her by inviting her to see something special tomorrow that might just jog her memory. We cut to the hacksaw competitor getting jumped outside a bar. The assailants incapacitate him and strip him of his weaponized arm. Vector pulls up and congratulates the team leader, who is none other than Hugo. Vector rewards him before killing the competitor as the unknowing Hugo drives off. The next day, Hugo and friends, along with Alita, leave the city and enter the wilderness. They take her to a warship that crash-landed 300 years ago. She feels connected to it and dives in the water for a closer inspection. Upon entering the ship, her muscle memory kicks in, and she's able to access the various panels on board. A marvelous body reveals itself to her, and she's compelled to take it back with her. She brings it to Dr. Ito and requests to be joined with it. However, he declines. She explains that she feels tied to the body and questions what else he knows about her. He reveals that this body is technology. Stands for the United Republic of Mars. Her people fought against his in the war 300 years ago. He invites her to put the past behind and start a new life. She insincerely accepts and walks off. We see her head over to the bounty station to register as a new hunter-warrior. Upon getting her ID, she meets up with Hugo and goes to a popular bar for bounty hunters. Before entering, she sees the cute dog from earlier, and it follows her inside. Upon entering, she's antagonized by Zapan, one of the top hunters. She brushes it off, then makes a speech to the bar. Alita asks them to join forces against Grishka, who's out for her and Dr. Ito's head. Zapan laughs at her, and she calls him a pretty boy who spends all his money on his face. A scuffle ensues, but she easily handles him. Alita extends a challenge to the whole bar. If she can beat everyone, then they must help her. A barroom brawl ensues as Alita proceeds to kick everyone's butt. Hugo even helps out along the way. Dr. Ito pulls up and breaks things up by threatening to stop giving out free repairs. That gets everyone's attention. Suddenly, Grishka arrives and he's got some new drip. He shows off his new hacksaw weapon before threatening Alita. However, the little dog has her back and tells Grishka to back off. Sadly, he kills the dog, then sets his sights on Alita. He destroys the floor and jumps down, taunting Alita to follow him. They battle it out, and Alita quickly finds that Grishka is much sturdier than before. He manages to get the better of her with his hacksaws, eviscerating her limbs. Suddenly, we're back in a flashback where Alita's mentor warns her about Nova, the man behind it all. Back in the moment, and sporting just one arm, Alita manages to propel herself into a piercing punch, skewering herself into Grishka's eye. Dr. Ito, Hugo, and another hunter arrive just in time to send Grishka running away once more. Following the attack, Dr. Ito unites Alita with her armor. At last, she's complete. She tries out her new body before meeting up with Hugo and sharing a kiss. We cut to Vector, who has just finished speaking to a once more defeated Grishka. He exclaims that he won't rely on a piece of iron again. Chirin asks him what he has in mind, just before we cut to a scene of him speaking to Hugo. Vector brings up Alita, and we once again cut. Alita is watching a hungover Hugo sleep. He awakens and they talk about Vector. Hugo shares that he only needs to provide 90,000 more credits before he'll be rewarded with a trip to Zalem. In an ill-advised gesture of love, Alita takes her heart out of her chest and offers it to Hugo. She implores him to sell the heart so they can both buy their way to Zalem. He declines and instead suggests that she participate in a tryout for motorball. She's got what it takes to be champion, and that could be their ticket to Zalem. Alita agrees, and we see her being fitted with skates by Dr. Ito. Meanwhile, Vector strikes a deal with the other, hand-picked participants. 500,000 credits to kill Alita. On the way to the event, Hugo calls Alita and lets her know he'll be running a little late. He stops by Tanji and the others and tells them he's quitting. A scuffle ensues between Hugo and Tanji over Alita, before Zapan emerges from the shadows. Zapan quickly makes it clear that he's not here to serve the law, he's here for revenge. He kills the man they were jacking, then frames Hugo for the murder. He then rushes him, pinning him against the wall. Tanji attempts to save him with a rear attack, but gets literally sliced in half. Yeah, this does, at least, buy Hugo enough time to distract Zapan and run away. Back at Motorball, the event is about to begin when Dr. Ito notices that all the other participants are either criminals or bounty hunters. Uh-oh. He warns Alita, but she's totally game to dispatch the foes. Some pretty dope scenes play out. Alita is decimating the competition with her superior movement and combat experience. I mean, she even kills this one guy with his own arm. Meanwhile, Hugo continues to flee as Zapan is in hot pursuit. He calls up Alita and tells her he needs her. Despite being a little busy, she finds a way to bust out the arena and agrees to meet Hugo at the abandoned church. The other participants follow suit, but most meet an untimely fate along the way. Alita beats down the remaining two. Oof, gruesome. Then saves Hugo in the nick of time. Though, Alita spots a poster with Hugo's bounty on it. She's stunned and in disbelief. Hugo pleads with her, but a confused Alita is frozen in place. Zapan reminds her of her obligations as a hunter-warrior, then stabs Hugo. Alita scurries off into the church with Hugo as other hunters and enforcer robots approach. As Hugo bleeds out in Alita's arms, Chiron is seen watching a short distance away with sorrow in her eyes. Vector calls asking if she's managed to find Alita, but she declines. With a change of heart, she instead helps Alita save Hugo's life. Alita exits the church holding Hugo's severed head underneath a jacket. The robot scans it and confirms the kill, but a bewildered Zapan inspects further. Gross. He tries to take the head, but is informed of his violation by the enforcer robots. Alita seizes the moment by snatching the Damascus blade and slicing Zapan's face clean off. Brutal. Dr. Ito comes in clutch and gives Hugo a new cyborg body. Alita pledges to take revenge and heads to the bounty station. She takes on a room full of countless enforcer robots, slicing and dicing her way past before dropping in on Vector. They talk a little bit, with Vector revealing that the only way to go to Solemn, besides becoming a motorball champion, is in pieces. He unveils a package that contains Chiron's harvested body parts. Horrifying. These will be sent up to Nova for his ongoing human experiments. Gorishka drops in and blindsides Alita with a piercing attack. Her nanobot armor heals itself. Then, she slices him in half. Nova assumes Vector's body and congratulates Alita for defeating his champion. He basically gives her a free pass as long as she stops interfering with things. She initially declines, but then he threatens her friends and family. This causes her to think of Hugo. She calls Dr. Ito and he informs her that he ran away from bounty hunters and is trying to climb up to Zalem. Alita intercepts him and convinces him to come back. They'll be on the run, but at least they'll be together. He agrees, but Nova launches a defense ring attack. The pair manage to jump, but Hugo is caught in its blades, losing most of his limbs. Alita manages to grab him, and he hangs on to dear life as he slips away. He gives Alita a final thank you before falling to his death. The film ends with Alita competing in motorball. It's been a few months, and she's been rising up the ranks on her way to becoming a champion. Nova looks down upon the city as Alita looks up upon him.